Okay, so what I've done here, as you can see, is I've started to shape the side of the chin, and before I go too much further I'm going to follow my own advice and do the same on the other side, even that up, and then we'll start to see a bit more of the shape of the face starting to appear. Having done a bit more rounding off and shaping here, I'll show you how we do the ear and the eye sections. Now, first of all, you want to taper the ear back from the high point so it flows in nicely back into the rest of the face. So you just work our way back from that point. Taking those sections off. And remember to keep your line. If you have to keep remarking, that's not a problem. Keep your lines in there, keep the shape. So I need to lose this. Using a V tool in here just to keep the shape of that line. And back to my flattish fishtail. So you can see how that part of the ear now separates out from the rest of the face. So now we can flow this back in. Remember to keep our cheek sections bulging out, so we don't want to take those out entirely. So we can dig in a little bit in here first. So come this way back from the front of the face first. Might just use a slightly more curved one there. So just setting back in from the cheek so that I can then come this way and flow the ear in. as you can see, that starts to flow back into the face there, leaving the cheek section. I might have this cheek slightly larger because of the bulging eye, so I might do that, leave that slightly enlarged as well. I'll just clean this up a little bit. Where we're at the top of the cheek here, we can flow back into the eye there, so leaving that bulge section out. So now we can put a little indent for the ear. You don't have to go mad on making it sort of anatomically correct. She hasn't got normal ears anyway, a bit pointy. So using a V-tool, or you can use a stab cut in and then a cut back if you haven't got a V-tool. So we'll mark out where we're going to put our shape there, and then coming back in, we'll have a little section there where it's raised. So again, just eye it up so it's symmetrical. So this is the section we're going to cut out here. So I'm just going to use a V-tool just because it's a bit quicker to do. So you start to get this inset section. You can then come around the back of the ear and tidy up around the back. Now you don't have to worry too much around the back here if you're going to put hair on. Because obviously that will all be covered anyway by the hair, but it's useful to practice to make everything nice and neat. And obviously all the time you can work away from yourself and your hands and your fingers, the better. I always quite like holding the thing and I end up working sort of towards myself, which is not the preferred way of doing it. This is the much safer way of carving. So providing you keep your hands behind the line of the blade, you shouldn't have any mishaps. It's a lot more difficult to do when you start to get into fiddly areas, but for certainly roughing out, you can do it this way. So we're starting to get the shape behind there. We'll just dig down in a little bit further into here. Just to give our hair something to sit on as well. You don't want it, if you weren't to cut that away, the hair would be sort of really bushy out here, and perhaps you don't want that. So if you have a sort of more realistic head shape, then you can work, hopefully get your hair a bit more realistic if that's what you want. Okay, so we've got that shape, we've got the cutout. Try and tidy up in here as much as you can. Might need a smaller little gouge to get in there. Let's see if we can make that nice and neat. This is where some stab cuts in. Now we've got that shape, might be worthwhile. Choose this one. So if you're doing it this way, you stab in, if you can see, where I've stabbed the cut in, and then you can work back in from the opposite direction into that cut and dig it out that way. So with a sort of stab in this way. Don't get your hands near there, especially when you're pushing down. So stab in perpendicular to the wood, then come back at this angle, reverse, and you'll see that you can then start to get that basically the same effect that the V-tool does. The V-tool just does it in one, so it's worthwhile having one if you can get one, but it's not essential. Again, we can stab in this way. Come back at the opposite angle. You can start to cut your bits out. Now we're starting to get some shape on the face, so I'm just going to carry on, do a little bit more rounding over, try and get this all to nicely flow in. Continue rounding over the top here, and then depending on how smooth you want your puppet, you can start to work on that, but it's best not to do that till the last, because as I've mentioned before, with the sanding, you don't want bits left on there which blunt your tools. So we want to get most of the shaping done. It's just if you're finding it hard to do round overs, They are quite time consuming to get things round. You can use a rasp or a file if you find that easier to get rounded shapes. But basically you just need to keep working at it, if you're unsure, just take off small pieces at a time, lots of them, working round, and get that round over shape so it all flows nicely. Again, we're going to have the hat on the top here, so we don't need to worry too much about the overall rounding, the finish at the top here. But again, it's good practice. And the hat's going to be sitting right on the top here anyway, so we don't need to worry too much there. But I'm going to tidy up a little bit more, get everything flowing a bit more in, and then we'll look at how we do the detail shapes. So I've done some more rounding off, as you can see, got everything flowing quite nicely together. So now we can look at how we do the details, which is the bits that you're really interested in. Now we've done the ears. Now we've got everything sort of nice and smoothed out. I'm just going to go around those again and just sharpen them up a bit. And I'm just going to do that by sort of retracing my steps and just sort of one good clean cut. Make a nice sharp defined line. That's quite nice. And then we can just sand that up, a little bit of sandpaper before painting, get that nice and clean. These jowl marks around the nose, well, I suppose you ought to finish off the nose here. So you've tapered back the nose right back from the tip to where it meets the cheeks, and obviously we need to then return in where it meets the cheeks into the to give us a return and that shape for the side of the nostril. So once you've got your taper in, you're going to need a curved gouge if possible, though you could do it with a straight one if you'd have to do it in various sections. But if you've got roughly the right curve, you can then just dig that in to create the side of the nostril here, and that will give us our start to work in. So we can start to work that nostril shape in. So I've done one cut in at sort of that angle, and then I'll come in at this angle so it's tapering in, so I can take that sliver out and then come back at this angle slightly, and then they're not didn't quite go in deep enough the first time. So with this one in like that, this one in, and then there we go. So you should see the where'd it go? The sliver of wood come out there, and that gives you a nice definition into the side of the nostril here. Then you can work that, tidy that up a bit, just work it in on the angle. Might get a slightly straighter one now, and do it in 2 or 3 goes. Just coming back in. All the way up to the top there. There we go, so you can see the definition now of the side of the nostril. Now we can taper this back in from the cheek, back into there a little, and we can do that by coming in back in this way from the cheek and just sort of grading that. Just so it's not a real sharp point in from the nostril, so it gets more of a flowing line back in from the cheek. Just doing some slicing cuts. So that's sort of how you do that bit of the nostril. Obviously we've got to come across the top here, for the top of the nostril, and into where the eye sits. So we'll do a similar sort of thing. We're going to use the top of this line for the nostril here, and then we're just going to slice back in on the bridge of the nose in that way. Going to tidy that up slightly because it's just torn. So I was going across the grain there, just slightly torn a little bit of the grain. So I'm just going to working with the grain. Just get rid of that slight tear there. So there we have the nostril. We can also work the jowls down to the side of the mouth. And there again, you can do that with either a V-tool or by stabbing in and cutting. So following just from the base of the nostril here, and you can make a line. So you could stab in like that 2 or 3 times, however long it takes you to get down to the base. And then we can work back in from this angle. And then just round over bottom there so it flows, tapers back in. Nip out that little bit at the bottom there so it tapers back into the chin. Okay, so then you can just work back onto that line if you want to really define that line. Depends how defined you want it to be. Working back in now this way, back to your cut, and pull out a sliver that way. And you'll probably notice I'm using the tool upside down. If you've got a nice sharp tool you can do that, and it's quite useful because you get the reverse profile. Obviously the tool is curved in that way. Turn it upside down, you're now getting that shape, and you can slice. You can dig in or you can slice using that profile and get that sort of shape. You probably find that you use your tools, if you're anything like me, 50% of the time upside down, slicing with them. So we've got this nice jowl shape here, and we've got the nostril. We can work on the mouth as well while we're down here. So we've already got this little line in. You might have bandsawed your little line, definition line in for the mouth, and then we're going to just carry that down, turn it down at the corners, unless of course you want her to be smiling, in which case you'd turn it up. So again, just can stab in like that, and then work back. Okay, back to slightly smaller tool to cut in. And again, it depends how much definition you want, sort of how deep you go in to there. And then obviously you can do the other side. Again, I'm just going to stab in there. Can be quite difficult when the nose gets in the way to work there. But you want the lips curving back in from both top and bottom, so you need to get in quite a sharp angle in there. You can always, of course, use the mallet to get a nice cut in as well. So cutting in and then tapering it back, and then the same at the top, and then you want to blend it out as you get to the corners of the mouth. Okay, so quite a grumpy looking mouth there. So you can just work on that, tidying that up, and then really the last thing we've got to do is work this area here around the eyes, which is perhaps the trickiest part. So we'll have a look at that next.